Transformation. Detra Trueheart. Come on, put your hands together, give it a round of applause.
Hello, hello, hello. 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 I just wanted to make sure if you were awake. All right. So, I understand that we are pressed for time, and so I'm going to get before you and I'm going to try to hit it and quit it. Because I know if you enjoyed the food like I did, one eye is open and one eye is closed. Yes? Yes? Good, good, good. So, first let me just say thank you to the Stop the Violence Coalition for inviting me. I count it an honor and a privilege. Yes. I'm humbly honored and just, I count it an honor and a privilege because I know that they could have chosen a number of people and they chose me. So I just want to say thank you. I want to quickly congratulate the honorees. I know you guys are all over, but I want to say congratulations to you for all of the work that you do, whether it's with the Stop the Violence Coalition or whether it's as a collaboration or a partnership. I know that the work that you do with young people in this community is greatly appreciated, and so I want to take the opportunity just to say congratulations. I also want to thank my family who's over there, my husband, my mom, my dad, a couple of other friends and family who are here. I just want to thank them for coming out. And so on this particular occasion, I also want to congratulate the Stop the Violence on their second annual banquet, because I know that the work that they do is important. And many of you, as I will talk throughout my keynote, may or may not know what they do. But during my research, I found that what they do is very important and very pertinent to the word, the actions, the behaviors, and the thoughts of the young people that we interact with and that they work with. So to Mark Fuller, his board, and his committee, I commend you on the work that you're doing, and I want to say congratulations on a job well done. As I pondered on what to say today, I thought about how many of us have been affected with, as I call it, dis-ease, not a disease, but a dis-ease called violence. And the reason I call it a dis-ease is because violence makes most of us uncomfortable, yes? Yes. Okay. Well, for me, I've been working with young people for probably over 10 years, probably maybe about 15 years. And during that time period, I have lost a couple of students. I've lost one or two family members, but I remember my first and most traumatic experience with violence. And it was about 20 years ago. I was 15, I was in high school, and this particular day, I had come home from school, and I was in my room, and a cousin who, God bless her soul, she's no longer with us, called. And she was crying on the telephone, and she called, and she says, "Hey, I need to speak to Uncle Mac," which is my dad. And I said, "Sharon, are you okay? What's wrong?" And she says, "No, I'm good. I just need to talk to Uncle Mac." And I said, "Okay, you sure you're okay?" And she says, "Yeah." So I called down to my dad. I said, "Dad, Sharon's on the phone." He takes the phone. I go back to my room. My dad comes upstairs, and he comes into my room and says, "I need to talk to you for a minute." And I said, "Okay, what's up?" He says, "But before I do, I need you to do me a favor. I want you to hug me. And I want you to wrap your arms around me, and I want you to hug me tight." And I said, "Okay, why?" He says, "Eric is dead. He was stabbed on a bus, and he didn't make it." Now, mind you, I talked to Eric last night, the night before he was killed. And we were supposed to talk. I was actually waiting for his phone call. And I think I almost passed out because I didn't understand how he was gone that quick. I didn't understand how actually the person who killed him, I went to school with. He was a classmate of mine. And I didn't understand how when I would see him in the street, I couldn't really look at him and I couldn't really say anything to him because I actually wanted to reciprocate what he had done to my friend. And you ask why I share this story with you. Because for me in particular, I know that at some point in time, many of us know people who have gone through the same thing. You see, I know that there are mothers out there who get phone calls that they no longer have a son or a daughter. I know that there are brothers and sisters who recognize that they no longer have a friend, a daughter, or a cousin, or a son, or a brother, or even a father or a mother for that matter. And it's interesting to me because I don't share that story with a lot of different people. And so as I do for all of my presentations, I prayed, I asked the Lord what he wanted me to share. And I was going through and I couldn't really figure out how to put the pieces together. And he brought that story to me. And I said, Lord, well, why would you bring that to me? Why would you, what does that have to do with anything? I mean, that was a personal experience for me. It happened like over 20 years ago. But the reality is that I never knew that I would have to go through that to be able to stand before you today to talk to you about my personal experience. And just to let you know that the Stop the Violence Coalition, although they weren't around back then, I know that they would have been, as they're called, the first responders at that point when Eric was found on that bus. Because actually that's when it happened. It was on a Metro bus and he was on his way home from Kensington Prep. And there was an altercation, which really was a disagreement or an argument that ended with him being stabbed, and he didn't make it. How many people do you know that didn't make it? Almost made it, but didn't make it. Think about that. And think about the work that the Stop the Violence Coalition does. Think about how their 24-hour hotline answers calls at 3 o'clock in the morning, sometimes 3 o'clock in the afternoon, about a call that's similar to the phone call that I got. Think about that. Because the reality is that this dis-ease called violence hits us from every angle. We may not think that we're affected by it, because you see, 3 years before Eric passed away, my parents had moved us out to Williamsville so that I could get a better education. That's what my mom said. I hated Williamsville, but I love it now. But at 11 years old, moving out somewhere that was a new world for me and I didn't know anything about it, I had been moved away from everything that I knew, including Eric. And so at that point in time, even though I didn't see violence every day, I was now connected to it. And so even though it may not be in your backyard, it might be in somebody else's backyard that you know. Whose backyard does violence and this disease creep up and just quietly, I mean, because that's how it happened. Less than 24 hours, he was gone. Less than 24 hours, he was gone. Went to school, came home, he was gone. He was gone. No longer. A mother without a son, a brother without a brother, a sister without a brother, a grandmother without a grandson. How many people have you lost? How many people have you lost? And have you thought about the work that the Stop the Violence Coalition does when you're watching television and you're watching whatever it may be on the news, or you're reading the newspaper and you hear about the young man who gets killed just before his graduation? And then you find out that the young man who now killed him is now sentenced to life in prison, no longer to have a life because he's taken a life. But who was there to Stop the Violence Coalition? Where were you? Where are you when they're in the trenches comforting that mother who has lost her son to a disagreement that went bad? Or her daughter that was shot on her way home from school just by a miscellaneous bullet? Are you sleeping warm in your bed? Comfy, cozy? On the Easter poly, what is Medea called? The Posturepedic? The Posturepedic mattress? Yeah. Because I don't want it to be too deep in here. I know I just dropped the bomb on you, but I really want you to understand how serious this thing is. It's not a laughing matter when they're in the trenches and you at home. And you're reading it, but they're living it. You're reading, you're watching, you might be playing spades, you might be sipping on a glass of wine, you're loud, having fun in your nice, warm, comfortable home, but what happens when it hits your home? Who do you call? Who do you call? And what do you say? How do you say, I lost my child. My friend was killed. My daughter is gone. What do you say? It's interesting because all of us can play a part in the work that the Stop the Violence Coalition does. Although you may not be in the trenches and you may not be answering the phone and you may not be out and about at the tables that they have at Juneteenth and putting up the flyers. And as I was driving home, it's so interesting because it's interesting how, like, you ever think, like, when you're thinking about buying a car and then you see the same car, like, everybody has that car. Anybody ever experienced that? You look and you're like, how come everybody got this car? Well, as I was coming home a couple of days ago, I saw the little Stop the Violence things you put in the grass. I said, now I drive past here. You know, you drive past somewhere about 50 million times, and now I notice it. And it was in maybe about 5 or 6 different grass, lawns. But just thinking about the work that they do. Kids need counselors. Kids need education. Some kids don't even want to go to school because they're fearful of the things that might happen. Some kids don't want to go home because they're fearful of what might happen. Some kids don't want to go outside and play, not even in their own backyard, because they're afraid of what might happen. And the question is what are you doing about it? The thing says pressing on to save a generation. What are you doing? My husband knows, and a lot of my family and friends know I'm a researcher. I look up facts. I want to know. When somebody asks me a question, I'm going to find out. That's just how I am. My husband can attest to that. And so as I was preparing for this message today, I was looking up the words, pressing on to save a generation. And so this is what I came up with. The words press mean to act upon with steadily, consistent, applied weight or force. To move by weight or force in a certain direction or into a certain position. To push forward. To urge onward. To demand immediate attention and urgency. That's what push means. Now the thing that got me though is that push means to move by weight or force in a certain direction or in a certain position, which means that you can go forward, backward, you can go in or out, but when you press on, it means to go forward. It means to proceed. It means to go on, and it means to advance, which is what this is all about. This is what the celebration is about, is moving forward, not moving backward. Saving means to rescue from danger, possible harm, injury, or loss. How awesome is that? To keep safe, intact, unhurt, safeguard, preserve. To keep from being lost. To free, liberate, defend, deliver, recover, redeem, guard, and protect. How awesome is that that's exactly what the Stop the Violence Coalition does. You see, we must be intentional, hungry, thirsty, driven to immediate attention, and moving forward, not backwards, in rescuing, redeeming, guarding, freeing, and liberating the next generation to carry on and carry out a legacy of love and nonviolence. That's what we're here today about. We're here today about linking up with the Stop the Violence Coalition. Not just watching what they do, but participating in what they do. Not just saying, oh, well, I don't have time for that. I have time for other things. But what happens when it is in your backyard? Now you have time for it. You didn't make time before. But that's what pressing on to save a generation is about, because pressing, the ing is ongoing. It's moving. It's cyclical. You don't stop. And it goes from one generation to the next. One generation to the next. And it keeps going. We don't just press. We're pressing. We're pressing. We're pushing. And see, when we're pushing, pressing means that when you're pressing against weight, there is resistance. So does that mean that it's going to be easy? No. Does that mean it's going to be simple? No. Does that mean that we're going to come up against some things? Yes. Does that mean that we're going to keep going? Yes. Does that mean that the harder they push, do we back up? No. Pressing on means that we push against. We push against. It's like the logo that's on the ticket. He's holding. He's holding, but he's leaning. He's leaning. You got to lean forward with what you want. You got to lean forward with the goals that you have before you. And their goal is to reduce violence. And so they're pushing forward and they're moving on to reduce violence. What are you doing? Because this is not really about them. This is about you. You're here to support them. And the financial piece is great. They need that. They need that a lot. But they also need you. Because some people can write a check without ease, but they can't show up. Oh yeah, how much you need? Oh, here you go. And they walk off. But what can you do? What kind of time are you putting into this thing? What kind of resources can you contribute? What are you doing? What are you doing individually? Individually, what are you doing? Everybody that's here and being honored is doing something. But those of you that are here to celebrate them, what are you doing? And what have you done? I'm going to close, and before I do, I just want to read off of, because I know that the time is limited, but I really want to read these statistics to you because I know that the Stop the Violence Coalition is aware of them, but I want you to be aware of them. According to the CDC, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, the National Center for Injury Prevention and Control, the Division of Violence and Prevention, on average, 16 young people ages 10 to 24 are murdered every day. 16 every day. 16 every day are murdered ages 10 to 24. Did you know that? Probably not, because I didn't until after I did my research. Now, I work with young people, and I didn't know these statistics specific because my specialty is not violence, but this right here piqued my interest, which means that I got work to do. This means that in this room of about 300 people, if we were all ages 10 to 24 on average, we would be dead in 18.75 days.
Wow.
On April 13th, this whole room is wiped out. That's the reality that we're dealing with here. Nationally, those are the numbers. 16 young people ages 10 to 24 are dead every day. How about that? Homicide is the second leading cause of death for young people ages 10 to 24. 87% are male, 13% are female, and 84% of homicide victims ages 10 to 24 are killed with firearms. That would mean in this room, 252 of us would be dead by firearms. That's not a nice number, is it? Because that's more than half. That's probably about 3/4 of this room wiped out. Boom, boom, boom. But that's the reality of what we're dealing with. As I say, for some of you it's not a surprise, but for the rest of you it should wake you up to the reality of what we live in. While I focus on some of the stats that have to do with homicides, let me share some other things that deal with other types of violence. 1 in 11 teens reports being a victim of physical dating abuse each year. 1 in 4 teens reports verbal, physical, emotional, or sexual abuse each year. The overall occurrence of dating violence is higher among Black at 13.9% than Hispanic at 9.3% or white students at 7%. Did you know that by the time students are in high school, 54% of them report dating violence among their peers? Did you know that? 54%. How many people have teenagers here? You might want to start talking to your kids. 80% of girls who have been physically abused in their dating relationships continue to date their abuser. The cost of youth violence exceeds between $70 and $158 billion a year. That's the cost of violence, not the cost to prevent it. Between $70 and $158 billion. I know right now in my head what I could do with $6 billion, let alone $70 to $158 billion on violence. Think about that. We're paying for the cost of violence, but we're not even putting anything to prevent it. In 2007, a nationwide survey of students in grades 9 to 12 reported the following risk behaviors. 5.9% of students carried a weapon to school on property. 7.8% of the students were threatened or injured with a weapon on school property. 12.4% of students were in a physical fight on school property. 22.3% of students were offered, sold, or given an illegal drug by someone on school property. Notice I'm saying on school property. Say on school property.
On school property.
On school property.
On school property.
No, I need you to hear yourself. Say on school property.
On school property.
That means while they were in school or somewhere around the school, not at home. So if you're wondering what your kids are doing when they're at school, some of this is telling you. This is the reality. This is the reality. But there's hope. There is hope. And the hope is everybody that's in this room. Should you be alarmed by these numbers? Yes. Should you be afraid of these numbers? No. Because the reality is they can change. But it can only change with everybody in this room doing something. You can't sit on your bonbon and watch people walk by. You have to be doing something. Something. That means mentoring. That means raising up your child to be a citizen of the country or of the city or wherever that gives back. That means being an example. Not saying do as I say and not as I do. Not living what you preach to your children. That means taking the time out to maybe mentor somebody else's child if you don't have children. That means making sure that your children get to school and get home from school safely. That means that if you operate in a capacity to counsel, then you need to be working with those students who are dealing with traumatic situations so that their parents don't get phone calls like mine did that said your child has been skipping school and we don't know why. Now see, I was keen because I knew better, so I knew which classes to skip and which classes not to skip, but I didn't want to be bothered because I was dealing with the fact that my friend was gone. Are you paying attention to the signs that your children are telling you? My kids in my girls program, they already know that Miss D knows what's going on. We have those talks. I say, what's going on with you? You looking a little funny. You all right? Kinda. Well, what's kinda? Well, let's sit down and have a talk. What's going on? I don't really feel like talking. No. Come on, let's go out in the hallway. Take time out for these kids. Because 9 times out of 10, the reason why they're joining gangs and getting involved in posses is because you're not paying attention to them and somebody else is.
That's right.
That's the reason why they join gangs, is to belong, to be loved, to be welcomed. They want love, they want honor, they want respect that you won't give them. But you too busy. They're just kids. Go on somewhere and sit down. I ain't got time for that. Go on, I'm busy. I got grown folks' business to do. Yeah. Grown folks' business to do while your child is out getting recruited by the kingpin or the OG or whoever it is because they looking for somebody who's vulnerable enough to get to spend a little time with them and pay attention to them and give them a little love and talk to them about some things that they've been having questions about because you won't take time to do it.
Right.
One of the readings that we do with my girls program is called 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens. The very first habit is be proactive. Take responsibility. Take responsibility for your portion of what's going on here. It said that if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem.
That's right.
It's either or. You can't be in between. You can't be having one foot here and one foot, either you are or you ain't. And the reality is you have to look in the mirror to see which one you are. You got to be real with yourself. And you can't be real with kids until you're real with yourself because kids will read through you.
That's right.
They know when you're fake. They tell me, oh, Miss D, they fake. Them people be coming up in there, they be trying to talk to us and stuff. That lady don't care nothing about me. Because, that's how they talk. Miss D, I don't even be trying to hear that. That lady come up in here acting like she trying to be my friend and stuff. She don't know me. But they can read right through you. They read right through you. As it is said, people don't know, they don't care what you know until they know that you care. Do you care? I mean, do you really care? And it's okay if you don't. I mean, that's something you got to deal with between you and your God, but the reality is somebody got to care.
That's right.
Somebody's got to care. Are you with me? Are you with me? I don't hear you. Are you with me?
Yes. Absolutely.
So as I close, I had a lot of fun stuff to share with you, but I'm not going to share it because I want to get out of your way. But one of the things that I will say is that the CDC is working on some things on a national level to deal with youth violence. And as I was researching, and I had, those of you who know that I do Twitter and Facebook, I was posting every day. I had learned about the National Youth Violence Prevention Week, which just took place Monday through Friday. But there were other things where the CDC is working on some models. One is it's a 4-level socio-ecological model that deals with 4 levels that have to deal with the individual, relationships, the community, and society. And I would encourage you, because I don't have time to really go into it, is to go to the CDC's website and take a look at the issues that have to deal with violence, because this right here is going to have to be a collective thing. It's going to not only happen on an individual level, it's going to happen with the relationships that these young people deal with, trying to make sure that they have relationships that, because there are certain relationships that kids get involved with that make them more at risk to violence. And so the idea is through this model, they want to be able to reverse that. And so on a community level, those types of things that we can get involved in on a community level, the schools, the counseling agencies, the community centers, the Mahana School of Music, the things that kids can do to keep them out of trouble, to keep their minds filled, to keep the wired energy, instead of it going negatively, to use it in a positive direction. Because we know kids can just, they just jump and just, drive you crazy, make your head hurt. You sit down somewhere. And so you put them in Miss Barbara's and let them tap away and just, the jumping jelly beans. But you got to pay attention to that kind of stuff. And not just say, oh, that child got ADHD. Just get on my nerves. I need to give her some medicine. Because that's what we want to do. Get that baby some Benadryl. No. Put that baby in gymnastics.
Right.
Get that baby a tennis racket. And despite what his personal life looks like, get that baby a golf club. Focus the energy. And then there's the societal level. That's the 4th level. And that's how it works. It works inward and it goes outward. From the individual to the relationships to the community to the society. From the individual to the relationships, from the community to the society. If we start with the individual, work with the relationships that they deal with, expand to the community overall, then society will be a little bit better, yes?
Yes. That's right.
That's how we have to work this thing. That's how you can be involved. That's how you got to get going and get moving in this thing. That's what this is all about. They cannot do it by themselves. And we shouldn't expect them to. So, my last quote, I didn't give you too many quotes because I couldn't, but this one I really liked. The first one is based off of Dr. Cornel West, and I stole this from your website. And actually, the funny part is I was on Facebook, and I follow Dr. Cornel West, and he posted this today on his status on Facebook. And so this says, you can't lead the people if you don't love the people. You can't save the people if you don't serve the people. Just like I said, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. You can't get into a kid's head unless they trust you. They tell you what they think you want to hear, and if you're dumb enough to believe it, then you dumb. Because the reality is kids are smarter than you think they are. Even the ones who skipping school, hanging out on the streets, hanging on the block, they looking at you, they can read you from the time that you show up to get to them. They already tell what your program's all about. And they know what they're going to say, how they're going to say to get you in and out the door and out their face. That's the reality of it. So Dr. Martin Luther King, in his Drum Major Instinct says, and so Jesus gave us a new form of greatness. If you want to be important, wonderful. If you want to be recognized, wonderful. If you want to be great, wonderful. But recognize that he who is greatest among you shall be your servant. That's a new definition of greatness. And this morning, the thing that I like about it, by giving that definition of greatness, it means that everybody can be great. Because everybody can serve. You don't have to have a college degree to serve. You don't have to make your subject or your verb agree to serve. You don't have to know about Plato and Aristotle to serve. You don't even have to know about Einstein's theory of relativity to serve, or the second theory of thermodynamics in physics to serve. I know, right? But you only need a heart full of grace and a soul generated by love. And you, everyone in here, you can be that servant. Be great by serving and pressing on to save the next generation. Thank you. God bless.